is in relation to Crohn's and, of course, his first cousin colitis, which is an incurable lifelong condition. And I think there's a very strong case for that to be on the long-term illness list. We have one of the highest rates in the country, and it's growing also. We have 450 young children with colitis now, and that's indeed a matter of grave concern for us.
Right, 2 minutes, Minister.
And to thank Deputy O'Loughlin for raising this important matter. The Long-Term Illness or LTI scheme was established under Section 59(3) of the Health Act in 1970, and regulations were made in 1971, 1973 and 1975 specifying the conditions covered under the LTI scheme. There are no plans to currently extend the list of conditions covered under the scheme. But for people who are not eligible to join the LTI scheme, there are other arrangements which protect them from excessive medicine costs. Under the drug payment scheme, no individual or family pays more than €144 a month towards the cost of approved prescribed medicines, and there is a commitment in the programme for government to try and reduce that maximum monthly threshold under the drug payment scheme. It's something I would like to do in future budgets. The scheme significantly reduces the cost burden for families and individuals with ongoing expenditure on medicines. People who cannot, without undue hardship, arrange for the provision of medical services for themselves and their dependents may also be entitled to a medical card, and the Deputy will be well aware of the assessment process in relation to the discretionary medical card, which can take account medical costs incurred by an individual or a family. And then in addition to that, obviously, people can avail of a GP visit card, which does cover the cost of GP consultation. So whilst the LTI scheme is quite an old scheme and hasn't seen changes in many years, it's a scheme from the 70s with the regulations in the early years of the 70s. And there are other ways in which I think we can try and address some of the issues. And I think the drug payment scheme and the fact that that threshold is €144 a month may be something that we should look at in future budgets.
Minister, I accept that the list has not been updated since the 1970s, and I know that you have indicated clearly that there is no plans to review this list. But I don't think that's realistic, and I think it fails to address the changing medical needs of the population that we now have. The Ireland that we have now is very different to the Ireland of the 1970s, and I fail to understand why it should be government policy to absolutely not look at changing the list. One particular lady contacted me about 3 weeks ago, a 36-year-old lady who was diagnosed with Crohn's 15 years ago, but continued with her life working full-time. But when she had a child 10 years ago, her condition vastly deteriorated. And I do accept that there are different levels. But this lady doesn't have a medical card, and even though she has a long-term illness, and I would feel certainly should be entitled to it, her husband works all hours, but they really